All right, so let's pick up right where we left yesterday, and review that last one I gave you. So, what are the 4 theories of the order of states? Yeah, evolutionary, force, divine, social contract. Okay, evolutionary theory is started as a family, got larger, eventually evolved into states. Theory was you were afraid you were going to die, so you paired off with people that maybe really weren't your best friends, but you protected each other. Divine right theory was that God or God gave you the right to rule for some reason. And social contract theory was we give you power in exchange for your protection. All right? Part of the question, one of these do you think is the actual theory, the one that is the case, and why?
I was going to ask you.
I'll tell you. Go ahead, Brittany. So Brittany says force theory, we were basically tied and didn't have a choice, right? What do you have, Mercedes? Contract theory, Mercedes is, and why? Go ahead, explain why. Just a couple sentences. So Mercedes is have the right to choose. People want to give up something in exchange for protection. That's what they do. So yours did it because they live safer lives instead of by necessity. Have to do it, but chose to do it. Anybody choose evolutionary theory? And I hope nobody chose divine right theory. All right. That's cool. I think it's a mix of evolutionary theory and this theory. I would say it's more theory than evolutionary theory, just because of the way civilization was run in decades, centuries past. It was pretty much be the fiercest, strongest person, either die, or fiercest, strong leaders and leaders die. But the became in, which I think was more evolution, where it's a family, and then it sort of grew bigger and bigger. But once those families got to a certain size, you eventually were forced to join with other who weren't your family, kind of. My best bet. Today's modern governments and my social contract. All modern governments have sort of come to a point where it's social contract. If you're in a democracy, if you're not in a democracy, it's pretty much force theory, right? It's yeah, we agree, but then the guy that rolls in with the tang, there's nothing you can do. What are you referring to? Are you Americans are lazy and don't do things? Most modern democracies are, because things and items sort of just happen sometimes for us. We've been allowed to life injury, but I'm really necessarily upset about that. Fine with me. That. So final thing we're going to before we start to assess the purpose of why does government. All right. First one, to make social order. So please remember watching the video or typing here. Type everything on the board, sure everything's short, because after this today, I'm going to send you on class. I'm going to have it. Governments provide ways conflicts among groups. That would be like, so we're going to do this later, but basically, 7th Amendment of the United States Constitution says anything that is of value $20 or more, you can take a federal court and summon a jury to determine who gave that $20 extra AF. Yeah, but it is 7th Amendment. So, for example, if I take these, these are mine, Michaela says they're not. I say, yeah, they are. And we disagree. We can go to the local system and they rule, and I appeal. We can go to the county and someone else, and then we go to the state appeal. We can bring a federal court into and summon people out of their lives to serve the jury, determine who gets those headphones. Both agree, we can just have a judge do it as well, which is what normally happens. Judge Judy, Judge Brown, those types of you can bring a jury. Also require people taxes, taxes, so they have stuff, right? Police, emergency service, fire services, use the most in your everyday life, interstate system that travels all the United States. Taxes go to pay, all kinds of those things. And your taxes go to pay me because I wore the government, the teachers. Thanks. Even though they really pay tax because you're not old enough and give them back. But it's okay. Your parents and guardians and dudes. Yeah, you don't enough. So if you pay taxes, that's you need to file exemption because you're too young. So
But how do we get
if you have a legit claim to them, yeah. Yeah. I'll show you about the taxes. Get there later on. The question was if I buy $5 worth of pizzas and somebody says that they're there, this federal court, the answer is yes, if you're listening on to the bill. Now, here's one they can require you to serve in the military if needed. Conscription hasn't been used. Vietnam conflict, pretty predominant. World War II. A friend that comes in on Veterans Day to my class is going to talk this conscription time. Basically, you had to go basic training and be ready to go. Something happened. He just happened to conscription right when the United States joined World War II. So he went conscription in the conflict in 94. Yeah, very good friend. Provide structures, courts, and to help maintain social order. This is also patients in schools and things like so that we have a well-educated population, which is a requirement for a democracy, an educated population. Government's purpose is to provide social services or provide public services. Undertake projects such as the roads that we on. Now, all of us, the roads suck in Ohio. What's really confusing, the interstates are run by ODOT, the Department of Transportation, right? There are some roads by the county, Clark County. There are some roads run by town. There are some roads that are run by the state. There are some roads run by town. So it depends on where you're driving, responsible quality of road. Does anybody know states with the poor roads on in the United States? Michigan. Screw those. Ada. Yeah, Titus. I know exactly. I went to school in Bowling Green, 423 up there, kind of near Sylvania. Awful, man. Awful. Terrible. Basically, the government does this. We don't have civilization all donate $1,000 to pay a company to go pay roads. Government for us as part of our business. Government's also public health and safety to promote general welfare of the state, like or Medicaid. If you don't know what Medicare or Medicaid is, yeah, Medicare is for individuals 65 years or older. Medicaid is for individuals who are unemployed or don't have money to pay for their health care. Correct. So that's the best way to remember it, and that's a great saying. So the Medicare is the care. If you turn down a job opportunity, you're not necessarily poor by choice. You are unemployed by choice, I guess, because having that job wouldn't necessarily make you wealthy. You know, so it really depends. So later this year, and maybe even later next week, I'm going to tell you how making $18 an hour makes you poor. Because if you make $18 an hour, you're poor. You are. I know. It's pretty close to what I make technically, but I know. So, I mean, I work a lot more hours than I'm contractually required to, But if I only worked minute by minute the exact number of hours I'm supposed to work, I'd be right there. But actually, I'm closer to like 20 because I spend 3 hours a night doing stuff for you guys, which I love. I love my job, so I just do it. You know? Oh, I love what I do. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Absolutely, positively not. They also provide national security. Pretty important, right? You like being alive? You like being Americans? Yeah. So governments protect their state from foreign attack as well as handling treaties, trade agreements, and communication with foreign countries. So what that means is if a foreign country says, hey, we want to attack the United States and take over, the government can send in the military and take care of that conflict and protect you, regardless of where you live, in any state. They also handle treaties. So there actually is a negotiation happening today for new trade agreements to replace NAFTA. If you don't know what NAFTA is, it's a North American Free Trade Agreement between Mexico, the United States, and Canada, where we can freely trade goods. There was sort of an informal agreement between the United States and Mexico. I'm not sure why, but President Trump wants to negotiate separate treaties, one with Mexico and one with Canada, instead of one with all three of them. Some people believe it's because there's this unspoken distrust with Canada for Trump because he doesn't like Trudeau, who is the president of Canada. They are very different people, like polar opposites. So maybe that's where this is coming from. We don't know for sure, but hopefully something replaces that because that helps the United States quite a bit and helps our neighbors quite a bit as well. And then our executive branch communicates with those foreign countries and basically says, hey, here's our goal. Here's what we want to do. What do you think? What are your goals? Allows us to sort of coordinate with other countries so we can make the best decisions for the both of us. All right. Last, they make economic decisions. Money, right? So this is a little different. This is what governments do differently as far as governments with capitalist systems and governments with communist systems and governments with socialist systems. But basically, gaps between the rich and the poor have been the basis for civil unrest throughout the world. And sometimes governments intervene in the economic system. So how many of you know what a subsidy is? All right, what do you think a subsidy is? Megan, right? Okay, you're thinking of a suburb, right? That's okay. A suburb is a city that sits outside. A subsidy is basically the government sort of gives you money to produce a good that they think is very important. So one of the most common subsidies that exists in the world are farming subsidies. So basically it costs a lot of money to make milk, okay? So much that if the natural cause and effect was in place, you'd be paying about $6 to $7 a gallon, right? So what the government does is it takes some of your tax money, pays a subsidy or a lump amount to dairy farmers so that they don't just stop and get out of the dairy business because they can't make any money. So they take that subsidy from the government, you buy your milk for $2 a gallon because your tax dollars subsidize that price. Now, why do we do that? Because milk is considered one of the necessities for people. So basically your tax dollars go to make that cheaper so that individuals who are of a lower socioeconomic class, poorer people, can still afford those things that other people can afford, right? This isn't the case for luxury items like Apple products and Android products. Samsung is more clearly what I'm speaking at. Those items don't get subsidized because they're not considered a necessity, unfortunately, right? But it is what it is. You know, those things are a luxury and therefore they don't get subsidized like food. All right. Governments may also intervene in the economic affairs of another nation if they want to, right? So economically speaking, the best example of this was the European Union that existed for a long time, right? It's still there, but something weird happened. The United Kingdom decided to leave. They left the European Union. For those of you that don't know what the European Union was, it was a collection of European countries that had agreed to trade freely. They allowed free travel. It didn't cost you anything. You could just go wherever you wanted. You still had to pay to travel. And they all used the same currency as a way to sort of come together as a bloc. And the United Kingdom wanted to leave. They wanted their own currency and their own laws and things. But basically that's one way, like the United Kingdom, when they were a part of the European Union, could have influenced other economies by leaving, which made their currency not worth as much. Does that make sense? You can do all kinds of things too. Like if you think you can make money on a country, sort of like what I talked about yesterday with the Asian contagion breaking out. If you think you can make some money, you can really interfere in their affairs pretty heavily. But they can also pass laws and economy, distribute benefit public services. So basically what that means is they can stop monopolies from happening, right? So for those of you that don't know, when the cell phone market first started, there were a ton of major, huge companies, right? There was AT&T, there was Verizon, right? There was Sprint, but there was also Singular Wireless was a huge one. There was also Alltel Wireless, which was a big one. Singular got bought by AT&T, and Alltel got bought by Verizon. There was Nextel, which got bought by Sprint. There were all kinds of huge companies. I'm missing a bunch of them. Virgin Mobile used to be a huge phone service provider. So all of those things sort of conglomerated, right? Now we really only have 4 major cell phone companies, right? They are in this order based on reliability. Verizon is number 1. T-Mobile is number 2. AT&T is number 3, and Sprint is number 4 as far as reliability and network service throughout the United States. Other than that, Verizon. Yeah, I'm a big believer in you get what you pay for. Sometimes better service costs more, but it's worth it. But it is what it is. You pay for what you can afford. So I'm lucky enough that I can afford it. I shouldn't say lucky enough. I worked hard enough to where I can afford it. Yep. So basically, what if AT&T and Sprint wanted to join together and Verizon and T-Mobile wanted to join together? Would they let that happen? Probably not. They may let 2 of those companies form if they're the smaller companies, but they definitely wouldn't let only 2 form together, because then they could both get together and say, hey, let's just raise our prices and not compete with each other and make a ton of money. And we wouldn't be able to do anything about it because they would own the entire market. The government could step in and say, no, you can't do that. Yeah. Comcast is a big one. We can talk about it at some point. All right. Now, last thing, and this is it. Governments typically encourage trade. Why? Well, because the United States can't produce everything that we need. How many of you like coffee? Guess how much coffee is produced in the United States? None. If we didn't trade, we wouldn't have coffee. Period. Right? That's it. There are only a few places in the world that can grow coffee. Ecuador being one of the most famous. Right? Colombia, Arabia, Arabica coffee, or Arabic coffee, right? So only a few places can grow coffee. And that's just one example. There are all kinds of things, right? You want to hear something pretty funny about the United States? We sell more oil than we buy. Why? Because for some reason, people pay more for our oil and we pay a whole lot less for their oil. So it's actually a positive sale to buying transaction. We make money by selling oil because our oil is more expensive, and the oil we're purchasing is less than what we're selling our oil for. Pretty cool, right? All right. Any questions? Awesome. Let me end the broadcast here, and then you will have an assignment you can send out. I'll send out on Google Classroom, and you can get